My brothers and sisters, the Lord be with you. Reading from the good news of Jesus Christ according to St. Mark. A leper came to Jesus and kneeling down begged him and said, "If you wish, you can make me clean." Moved with pity, he stretched out his hand, touched him, and said to him, "I do will it, be made clean." The leprosy left him immediately, and he was made clean. Then, warning him sternly, he dismissed him at once. He said to him, "See that you tell no one anything, but go show yourself to the priest and offer for your cleansing what Moses prescribed. That will be proof for them." The man went away and began to publicize the whole matter. He spread the report abroad so that it was impossible for Jesus to enter a town openly. He remained outside in deserted places, and people kept on coming to him from everywhere. The good news of our salvation. And so, be my Valentine. Be my Valentine. I say that to my three amigos here. Be my Valentine, right? But really, it's what God is saying to each one of us is to be God's Valentine. God invites us into the heart of his love. So in some respects, this Valentine's Day is really about us. It's about religion. And ultimately, Christianity is really a religion about God's love, right? And really, the one definition that we have of God in the scriptures is from the letters of John, and he says very simply, God is love. God is love. That's who God is. And sometimes we can get caught up only in the externals of religion and in the rules and regulations of religion. And it's not to say that externals and rules and regulations don't have a place. Indeed, they do. That said, however, the priority is about the love of God and the love of neighbor. And that's why this Valentine's celebration is really, I like to look at it as a celebration of what religion is really all about. It's a day in which we tell people we love them, they tell us that they love us, and we express all of this, and we give candies and whatever else. So it's really, to me, it's at the heart of the matter. And so, in the gospel along these lines, we see Jesus, a man who has leprosy, goes to Jesus, and we see Jesus healing this man. Now, there's a couple of things that's really very, very important. He goes to Jesus and says, "If you will it, if you want to do it, Jesus, heal me." And what does Jesus say? "Yes, I do will it. I really want to love you. I really want to heal you. I really want you to be free. Yes, I really want this," is what Jesus is saying. So this is powerful. And it's a great image of who God is and how Jesus enters into our lives. Now, when we talk about leprosy, we got to understand that this was really not just a physical disease, it was a social disease. And by the way, it was a bunch of years ago, I was in a place, I don't know if you've ever heard of the place, called Carvel, Louisiana. And I was out there giving some talks and stuff, and they said to me, "Do you want to go to Carvel?" And I thought they wanted to go for ice cream because it was Carvel's ice cream. Well, lo and behold, Carvel, Louisiana is a place where there used to be, they don't call it leprosy, they now call it Hansen's disease, right? Where people had Hansen's disease in all of North and South America. This is the place where they were sent. Now, this is not that long ago, and this place was funded by the United States government, and it was sponsored by the Daughters of Charity of St. Vincent de Paul. Now, the place closed about 10, 15 years ago, but when you go there, what I saw was it was surrounded by barbed wire fences. People couldn't get out, and people couldn't go in. And they took me into the community, and I met many of the people at Hansen's disease. And what they had was, there were cottages So people who might have gotten married, whatever, moved out of the main buildings and they went into these cottages. They had their own newspaper, their own stores, their own drugstores, and so on and so forth. It was a world unto itself. Why? Because people were afraid of those who had leprosy or Hansen's disease because they thought at that time that it was contagious. Now, in the time of Jesus, now mind you, we're going back to the first century. It's a lot worse. In the first century, if you had this disease of leprosy, you were thought to be possessed by demons. You were thought that you had done something terribly wrong, and it was not just a physical disease, it was looked upon as being a spiritual disease. So if you had leprosy, you were expelled from the community. They had this quasi-funeral, they sprinkled dirt on you as if they were burying you, and you had to go off into a village of other people who had leprosy. And if you came out of the village, you had to ring a bell. So people would run the other way. So you got to get the picture here. Jesus is encountering a man with leprosy. Jesus doesn't run away. He does not run away. And there's a powerful, powerful word here. Jesus has pity. And the word in the Greek means he is touched at the core of his being when he sees this man who is not just physically suffering, but is being socially and spiritually rejected by the people around him. Jesus is deeply troubled by this. And he reaches out to the man and he embraces him. Now, first of all, by the way, we must do social distancing. So I'm not talking against this. But he wasn't social distancing, was he? Right? Looking upon this disease as something that was contagious. Also, again, this is another thing that he's doing on the Sabbath, and you weren't supposed to do this. So he's saying that there's something bigger than these external rules and regulations. Now, when in fact we reach out to be with those who suffer in any way, especially those who are rejected, the thing that's very interesting to me and very moving to me, we're doing something for them, but they are also doing something for us. And I'll give you an example that comes to mind when I read this gospel text. There's a woman that I know whose son had AIDS. This goes back a number of years. And she initially rejected her son because her son was gay. She rejected him. He contracted AIDS. And what happened was the mother, when he got sick, took him into her home. And the way she described it to me, she was gradually transformed. She was changed. And she said as she took care of him, she realized how much she loved him. And she realized how much he loved her. And she felt so badly that she had rejected him. And what she said was, what she told me was, I learned a very important lesson that my son taught me. And the lesson he taught me was never to judge another person, but to only love other people. This was my son's gift to me. So her, like Jesus, taking care of the one who had leprosy, if you will, right? In fact, she was, in fact, transformed. Now, it's interesting to me that when we talk about a religion of love, right, it's about compassion. And what's very powerful is this. There's three words. It's empathy, there's sympathy, and there's compassion. Now, if you look these words up, empathy and sympathy are things that people in the helping professions extend to others. They have sympathy, right? They have empathy. And you would expect this from those in the helping professions, from nurses, from doctors, from psychologists, from teachers, etc. You would expect this. But there's a further step, right? And if you look up the word compassion, what the dictionaries will tell you is that religious people do compassion. Religious people do compassion, right? And so we then go that extra mile. And like Jesus, we feel intensely for those who are suffering, who are rejected in any way. Tomorrow, or on Monday, here at Sacred University on the 15th of February, we're going to be having an all-day gathering during this COVID-19 time to, first of all, support one another as we live through this stressful time. But also what we're going to do, we're going to read the names throughout the day of all of those who have died of COVID in the state of Connecticut, as well as names that members of the community have sent in. And by the way, if you have names that you'd like to send in, just email them to us and we'll include them in the service tomorrow. Now, there'll be about 7,000 names that are going to be read tomorrow. And this will start at 9, and God knows how long it's going to go throughout the day. But here's the point. You know, you can be overwhelmed with 7,000 names. And by the way, in the country, as you know, I think it's 450,000. Was it 450,000 in the country? So the thing that we need to be careful of, that these just can become another number. These are not numbers. These are people. These are human beings. And we need to be careful, I feel, not to become numb to all of this, which could so easily happen because it's so overwhelming. And the worst thing is that we get used to people dying. We get used to it. Why? Because there are so many. And what I want to say to you strongly is that we should never, ever, ever get used to this kind of thing, because every human being counts in the eyes of God. And that in fact, just as Jesus reached out to heal this man who was, quote, unclean, so too we reach out to one another and to every human being. And like Jesus, we feel this in the depths of our heart as we extend God's love to others. And so, sisters and brothers, you are God's Valentine. You are God's Valentine. And Pope Francis goes to another country. He kisses the ground. When the Dalai Lama goes to another country, he says to people, I want you to be happy and I don't want you to suffer. So every person that you meet along the way, because you are God's Valentine, in your mind, kiss the ground that they walk on, because you hold every person as sacred. In your mind, say to every person, in your mind, I want you to be happy and I don't want you to suffer. And so, as we are God's Valentine, as God has given us these gifts, let us now, like Pope Francis and the Dalai Lama, embrace all others with the same love that God has given to us.